Welcome to Entrepreneur Life with me, Joel Campbell, and I am an entrepreneur. It has been, I say it's been a while since I've done one of these, and I say that every single time I do one. It's not actually been that long, it's just been a while since I've actually published one, because I think that, well, I don't think, what happened was time just gets kind of away from me, and therefore I've not had time to do it, and Paul has been busy in marketing, so he's not had time to edit it, and therefore it's just not happened, basically, is the reason. I thought what I would do today, though, is something not necessarily different, but just a little bit different. Is I want to pick up on some of kind of the changing trends within the industry. So normally when I do this, I just talk and whinge and moan about all the shit that I have to deal with week in, week out, and basically what's happened in the previous week. But I thought that I would give you a little insight into that world, but kind of a little bit deeper behind what's been happening, specifically in sort of leisure and tourism, and hospitality and such. And actually, I've moved into the green room today, so Paul's probably put a lovely backdrop behind me. I could be anywhere, I don't know, I just give him complete control over that. Jordan's here, so Jordan's in the studio actually doing the recording piece. I'm going to pick up on that as well through this journey, and I'm going to stick myself again to that 30 minutes and try and keep it tight. I've even set a timer. I'm going to start though. I'm going to start with some tea, and then I'll tell you where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with. I'm actually, as my ADHD brain's gone, I'm fasting, so I'll come back to that as well. I'm going to start not too far away from Shrewsbury Prison, so our attraction in Shropshire, because what got announced, it was week before last, or the back end, a couple of weeks ago, is that Ironbridge, one of the attractions there, so Ironbridge Gorge Museums, which is a collection of 10 different museums, have basically been folded into National Trust. I'm using the wording just as it's been talked about in the media, is they've been folded into the National Trust, and the National Trust have been given a £9 million grant by the government to secure the future of those museums. Now that's all really good, and it is really good, and I'm really pleased that's happened. I've been aware of this probably now for maybe going on 6 months, that this was going to happen. It's not been, I would say, a hugely kept secret. It's been pretty obvious that that's going to happen. And what I'm picking up on there is that it's really positive that the museums are going to be saved. It's really positive that they're going to become part of the National Trust ensemble, or part of that group, and more people are going to be access it. And it's really positive that they're putting money into it to help do that. What I have found interesting is the way that the media, and I guess that PR machine, has maneuvered the story, because ultimately what you have is a failing business. The Ironbridge Gorge Museum Trust, they've got the 10 museums, and ultimately what's happened is they've run out of money. They ran out of money a while ago. They had loans. I'm not sure the specifics of what the loans are. And I know that obviously they're paying the interest on the loans as you do. And effectively those loans have now come due. So foreseeing what's going to happen, which is effectively the collapse of those museums, the loss of the jobs, the loss of the volunteers, the loss of the heritage assets, and then what will absolutely become a very, very fast decline, they've secured this agreement with National Trust to take over, which is now happening. The National Trust have been given a £9 million grant by the government to effectively get these attractions on their feet and move forward. This is really no different than what happened when councils shed leisure centres into charitable trusts. And I was part of a group that did that, so I've seen it happen. And it's all good, and it is a progressive step forwards. I just think that from my perspective, looking at it from the outside in, as both an entrepreneur, a business owner, and somebody that's in that world, and actually they're competitors of ours as well, we should call a spade, and ultimately their business has failed. They've therefore been bailed out effectively by being absorbed into another company and given grant money going forwards. It probably irks me a little bit. In fact, it irks me a lot. And the reason it irks me is not because I'm not happy that they've gone forwards. It's because we, as a commercial business running off our own backs, which doesn't have that kind of level of support, don't have that backup of what would happen if we went into problems. And also, I look at a £9 million fund Because that's what it is, it's a grant effectively. Here you go, here's 9 million quid. And I think that at Shrewsbury, that would build our new hotel and spa, that would redo everything within the jail, that would make it completely fully done, and we'd still have 1 million quid to spare. So from my perspective, I just think it's positive, but it's also, it's a weird one. So that's kind of what's happened in the last couple of weeks. But that brings me on to where I think the changing trends are within the tourism industry, because I saw in COVID a real concern for our business, which was we were 100% reliant on one strand and one stream of income, which was really through our attractions, and predominantly 95% of that was through our consumer market. And I've spoken about this a lot, about that split between the B2C and the B2B world. And I made the decision at the back of COVID that I wanted to do two things. I wanted to diversify our portfolio into other businesses, so therefore we had more stability. But I also wanted to diversify what we currently had as a product offering within the existing businesses. And unfortunately, 5 years later, I've not been able to do both. What I have been able to do is diversify the portfolio within our businesses. So we've moved from being a 95% B2C to now being a 60% B2C, with the other 40% of our income all being generated off the B2B market. What that's done is it's really stabilized our business in a different way. And like I said, I saw this coming a little while ago, post-COVID, and then all the challenges that people have had with rising costs and with cost of living going up far above wages. It was a really solid move from our perspective to make that jump. And September was the first month. And I've been looking at it through June, July, and the figures every single month. I looked at August, which is where we normally see that huge peak because we get the consumer income coming in. And we did see that in terms of it was a peaking up from June and July, but the visitor numbers haven't increased from previous years because people just don't have that same spending power. And I also think the industry's changed slightly in terms of what people are looking for and what they're doing. What was really interesting for me was come September, I found that the income stayed the same. So when we came back and we plummeted in consumer numbers in September, which is expected, but the income, we generated £1,000 less in September than we did in August because we'd established our B2B business really well over the last couple of years. And actually, we've seen a huge shift. And what that's meant is we've also then seen a shift in how our staff operate, because we've seen a shift in terms of we've got more salespeople and less marketing people. Because the sales guys purely work in B2B, the marketing guys span across both. But sales guys can go and penetrate markets like education and corporates and stuff without necessarily as much support from the marketing guys as trying to get consumers through the door. So that's been kind of like a big thing for me recently. I've been hammering our teams, and certainly the senior teams, the directors and the senior managers around thinking about that shift. And actually I was doing some work in marketing the other day and somebody presented something to me which saw our B2B market at 60% and our B2C at 40%. And I was like, I never once imagined, never ever thought that we would see our attraction world doing more B2B business than our consumers. And I think that just goes to show that shift in the market is massive. Where that brings us back to where I started with Ironbridge, I don't think they saw it. And I don't think a lot of attractions are seeing it. I think that some of them have definitely seen it, they've definitely grasped it. Merlin, I'm always so impressed with Merlin. Everybody knows I've got a proper crush on Merlin. And they came out again 2 weeks ago and they're changing their memberships. And I just thought, what a genius move. And I was trying to figure out, have they reacted to poor summer holiday numbers? Or have they been planning this for months and they've just waited until they've gone past the summer holidays where they generate their highest income, and really they've launched it between the summer ending and Halloween starting, and Halloween's their last bit before they then close off for the winter season. And I was trying to figure it out, and I was like, there's no way they could have reacted that fast. They're too big. They just couldn't have reacted that quickly. They have to have planned this. And I sat there with a big grin on my face, really cocky in a meeting, because I was like, I know I've got this right because Merlin have done it. And if Merlin have done it, then I know we're right, because that's heading the right direction. And that was a shift. They've done it very much in their B2C world still, but they can do, because they're so big, they've got that power to be able to do that and to absorb some of the losses in the meantime. So I think that a lot of other attractions haven't seen it. I think some have, and they're starting to make the shift. We saw it a good couple of years ago, and we've already made the shift, and now we're starting to see the benefits of that. And I think the others that just haven't touched on it at all, they're going to get hit. And I think what we will now see is we're going to see a challenging Christmas for some attractions. I'll talk about ours in a sec. Oh, I don't know if I can actually. No, I probably can't. I'm not sure. I'll have a think as we go. Sorry, John, this happens a lot, right? I'm not sure if I can say that, and I say it and I get in trouble. So we'll see if we can go through that. Where was I? There goes that brain again. In terms of, I think what we will see is come January, February, we're going to see loads of attractions, loads of tourism locations really, really struggle. And I'm not sure how many we'll see reopen come February. Half term is always a starting point, but certainly come Easter. Easter, I think, is earlier this year. It's some point it's the beginning of April. So Easter's earlier, so that's going to be good for places to get back open again. But I think we'll see a huge closure. We're already seeing that in like zoos, and we're seeing it in some of the higher costing businesses to operate. So it really does, for me, come down to that diversification. I know, very different kind of entrepreneur life today. Normally it's just me whinging about like the HR issues I've had to deal with, or like not being able to park or charge my car or something kind of first world problem. But yeah, I kind of felt that's something that's been on my mind that I wanted to kind of get out and sort of share. And I wanted to start making those predictions because, again, without being too cocky or arrogant, I do this a lot. I make a lot of kind of decisions and predictions internally. I tell my team, I say, right, this is what I think we need to do. This is what the market's doing. This is where it's going. And I don't really shout about those that much. And I don't know if that's because I'm worried about getting it wrong and people calling me out on it, or worried about getting it right and then being natural Joel and getting quite cocky about it, or what. But I thought, actually, I'm going to start doing it because I think generally I've got a good sense and a good barometer for kind of how these things are going. And I think I see that well. And I spoke to the finance guys as well, our lenders. I spoke to a couple of other potential lenders that were looking at our market. And they all kind of are seeing a similar thing. And the question was, is hospitality coming next? So is restaurants going to be the next one hit? And again, I had that conversation with them. This all happened sort of, it's been happening for a while, but I had a lot of meetings a couple of weeks ago. And then we saw Pizza Hut go under. And it was just like all these kind of things. So I guess my message to you, if you're watching this, if you're one of the 7 people, and you're watching this and you've got a tourism attraction or anything along those lines, you need to start thinking about diversifying and what else you can do. And we're doing that now with the gels even further. We're starting to look at going, right, we've got 178 cells. We maybe use 25, 30 of them. What are we going to do with the rest? And that's at every single one of our attractions. So we're starting to look at that and starting to bring in other partners, other operators, other people that can use those spaces and just think a bit differently to how we have done in the past. And a big shift for me, and I guess we did diversify our portfolio subconsciously because we started our property companies where we were buying the properties that we use for the attractions. And what that's done to me is start thinking about, okay, I'm not thinking as an operator anymore. I've got this building and I can just kind of do what I like in it. I'm starting to think as a property owner and as a developer and a landlord and going, right, I've got this property and there's this company in there that use 20% of it. What am I going to do with the other 80%? And how does that fit into that ecosystem so I don't upset the tenants I already have? So I guess that has been a shift for me. Where that's shifted further, and I guess bring that into the moaning and the whinging bit, is with employees, because what's happened is the cost of living has risen substantially higher than what people are getting paid. We're tourism, so we predominantly see quite a low paid industry. A lot of staff will be down on minimum wage. So I think that's standard. It's very difficult in our world because you still have the centralized services like marketing, finance, sales, senior managers, directors and stuff that still command the salaries that they would do if they were in the same roles but a different industry, because that's role specific. Whereas if you're working in, for example, the cafe or the visitor center, or you're one of the cleaners, you're going to be at the lower ends. So there is a bit of a challenge there for us in terms of how we make that work. It's almost like running two different businesses. But with the change in national insurance, we saw a 20 grand increase in our salaries in May just from that national insurance change. It was a huge hit for us, just like it was for a lot of businesses. Again, we saw it coming. We were able to figure it out, to work through how we were going to do it. It wasn't me. Our COO came up with a really solid way of making it work for the business and for the employees. Not everyone was happy with it, but if he hadn't have done that, I think we'd have really struggled. I think we'd have been real trouble. So I was really pleased that he came up with a way of moving forwards. Again, for me as a business owner, I was like, this is good. Other people are making these decisions and making it flow. So that was positive. What it has seen, and I think what's disappointing to me, is I've not been able to flex as much as I would like to as an entrepreneur. Previously, I've been able to just grab people and go, yeah, come do a day a week here, or do 2 days a week there, or help out with this project, and sort of move people around and give people those opportunities. And I can't do that in the same way anymore because it's so expensive to employ somebody. It's detrimental to what we do. So we've kind of got this, say, unwritten rule, this is probably why I'll get in trouble now from HR, is we don't want people to be on contracts of less than a certain amount of hours. It never used to bother us, but now it does, and that has been predominantly, that is now a financially driven decision because of the cost of employing somebody. And that's a real shame because it means that we can't bring people in. I'll pick on Jordan slightly, and hopefully I won't get in trouble from him or HR, because Jordan works in one of our attractions. And he's a great example of where I think this can work well. He works in one of our attractions, so he's got a contract working there. He dropped me a message and said, hey, I know you've got bits happening in media. I know it's a bit rubbish and I'd like to make it better. That's kind of how you put it, wasn't it? Yeah, we'll go with that, yeah. I think I can make it better. So I was able to go, yeah, cool, no worries, come along, this is what I'm trying to do, see if you can help, and if you can make it better, great. Why that's worked is Jordan's now coming in 1 day a week to help in the media side of things. And that's possible because he already works for us. So we're able to just increase his contract. Had he not, and if he just messaged me through Facebook, Instagram, being TikTok because he's young, then what would have happened is I would have struggled to have brought him in because the cost of bringing him in for 1 day would have been almost too high for the value we get back. And it would have been hard to subcontract it or self-employ it just because, again, all the implications that come with it are there's quite a lot there. And I'm not as keen having subbies and self-employed people because I think that what we want to embed from a cultural perspective, I'd rather you're part of that whole journey. So yeah, so that's kind of where that's been a challenge. I'm just going to check my time because randomly I kind of run out of subject. This will be interesting how it changes, and I will round it up here because what I wanted to do in the media world, I saw this years ago, and actually it was, I'm trying to remember who was put me onto it. I got a feeling it was, and I promise this isn't set up, it means nothing to you guys, but it will to those guys. I got a feeling it was Fliss that said, check out Gary V, you're gonna like him because, and this was like 2017, 2018. And I remember looking at that, and it took me a little while to figure out how somebody creates their business brand around them and how both sort of grow together, because I was always concerned that Branson model, Branson dies, Virgin has no figurehead. It hasn't actually for a while because he's stepped back. But they're almost too interconnected. Whereas I think something like VaynerMedia, like a lot of people that watch Gary Vee will never buy his services because their VaynerMedia services, their starting point for B2B is $1 million. If you have to spend $1 million in marketing to even get a contract with those guys. And it was interesting because I was chatting to our heating engineers the other day, and we were talking about how to heat the gel in a different way and what the most economical way is, and various different conversations. And I was chatting to them about their client base, and they said to me that they really picky about who their clients are. And suddenly I was like, whoa, I actually feel really privileged to be one of their clients because they could cut us off really quickly And it would be a real struggle for us to find another supplier because it's quite a complex beast. So I think that kind of, I've diversified, I've gone crazy, but I think that just brought me back to kind of, I wanted to have people be able to follow what we were doing now and what I was doing now. I didn't want to get to the end of it, whatever that might be, and be able to look back and go, oh, I'm going to tell you all these stories of how I got from here to here. I wanted you to be able to see it through the journey. And that's literally what I've been doing over the last few years. And having someone like Jordan in it is just to try and enhance that and bring just a little bit more structure around it and figure out how we can go, that's what this show is doing, and that's what this piece is doing, and that's what this piece is doing. Just so it brings it a little bit more, like I say, it just makes a bit more sense. So that's kind of where it was at. So I'm not quite sure how this is going to span out, whether this will just go back to me being on a sofa, whether this will be me doing little clips throughout, whether this is going to move into staying here in the green room. I'm not quite sure. But I think what was important was to get the recording in today, start trying to figure that out, and also start sharing those bits of where I think industry is going to move. And I'll finish that. I do think the government have really screwed this up. But not just this government. I think all governments have been screwing this up for a while. And the people that are suffering is definitely business owners, employees, and everyone around it. And we're all suffering in that same world at different points, but it is happening across the board. I don't really want to finish on a negative, but I don't really know where to go outside of that. I think we're doing okay. We're doing well as a business. It's moving. I'm quite happy and content. It is making us think differently. I saw a resignation come in over the weekend, and I shouldn't have seen it, but I did because I was working where I shouldn't have been, but I was. And I thought to myself, do we need to replace that person? And I'm going to ask that question down the line, back to the manager, back to the line manager, and just sort of question, is there a different way of doing this? Which I think I should be doing anyway, but that's been driven more by the thought process of going, I wonder if we don't have that salary, where else that money could go. And that is definitely now more of a thought process in the forefront of my mind because of that rising cost. Whereas it never used to be there. We probably would have just replaced that person or got someone new and rejigged roles slightly, but that would have happened. Now we're actually going to question it and go, can that be done in a different way? And that will bring us into AI world and what that looks like. But I think that's a different one because otherwise that's going to really run over time. So I've managed to squeeze into probably about 22 minutes, which is pretty good for me. So I'm going to finish it there. I'm going to drink my tea. I won't talk about fasting today. I'll do that at another point. But yeah, that is why I'm drinking black tea. So this has been Entrepreneur Life with me, Joel Campbell, and I am an entrepreneur.